because I realize, Stefano, that there's no lack of money. There's 369 trillion in global wealth. There's no lack of information. They say it doubles every month or so. Countless, ideas. They're all connected to people. And nothing happens without people. People write the checks. They know about the deals. I think now they say 90% of jobs come through who you know. And so another powerful thing is to build a strong network.
Welcome. I'm your host, Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership and, most importantly, about leaders. One of the qualities that the leader should have is to being able of networking, because networking is basically creating the base for your endeavor, any type of endeavor you want to do, and it can be networking within your company or outside your company. Well, networking is what I've been talking about with Judy Robinett, the guest for this episode. Judy is an amazing person. She's not just the author of two best-selling books. One is on networking. It's called The Power Connector. Published in 2014, it was #1 among the business books. And the other one is Crack the Funding Code. It was published in 2019. So, but also she has been a CEO and vice president and more of many other companies and founders. And she was also an angel investor, and she sits on the boards as of directors in many companies. She knows a lot about leadership, and she knows how important it is to understand the human dimension of leadership, and to have qualities like curiosity, like transparency, and much more. This is an amazing conversation because Judy really knows a lot. And she's willing to share everything with us. So I really invite you to listen to the podcast and to subscribe to the podcast, so to make it bigger and even more popular, and have other great guests like Judy coming and talking to us. Also, you can follow me on my social on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. And with no further ado, Judy Robinett. Judy, I'm sure your perspective on leadership is special, and I'm very curious on what is your definition of leadership.
So I think my leadership definition would be that you truly have to lead people, much like the shepherd leads the sheep. So you are there to protect, guide, and help people. So, there's a saying that people have rushed to the top of the ladder and found out they're going the wrong direction. And I think it's really true. You have to have vision. And really imperative to care about your people, create the kind of culture that is important, but be really cognizant of vision and share that.
Well, I really agree on what you're saying, and especially when you talk about having a vision, because having a vision gives a direction, right? It's not like, and also you need to be able to communicate the vision. It's not just having a vision. You have to be able to have everyone on board. Is there some skills that you would kind of recommend to leaders to being able to have everyone on board and walk or run or whatever towards the vision?
Yeah, so I think that you have to be transparent. and, be willing to tell the troops when there's problems, but also be able to ascertain, a path forward. So the most important part, I believe, is the communicating. So, for instance, I was CEO of a public biotech company for about 10 years. When I started with the company, I just went to advise the board of directors on the path forward. They were broke, they were in litigation, and they'd been delisted off the stock exchange. And I gave them advice, and the chairman of the board said to me, "Oh, Judy, we want you to be the CEO." And I think I said to him 3 times, "I can't be the CEO of a public company." And then I decided I'd always wanted to do that when I was younger, and that maybe I should. And so, it was really important to me, particularly in kind of dire circumstances, that I communicate closely with the board, my action plan going forward. And I let them know, when we had hit the wall on various things, and you always hit the wall. There's always problems. There's always conflict. And so I think, certainly having a close communications with your VPs, right, and your board is absolutely crucial. But you need to, push that down throughout the company. And, that can be in group meetings. Certainly the VPs can handle a lot of this, but I think it's imperative. And, there's people out there that say, true leaders are bullies. So you can look, a lot of people will say, well, look at Steve Jobs, or look at Elon Musk. They've been able to achieve great, brilliant things. But, I don't really buy into that, because I see the damage that is left behind.
That's a good point. That's actually a point. And you pointed at 2 people that many others they use as a role model, right? In many other interviews in this podcast, I've heard these names coming out many times. But there are aspects that are probably not ideal. Let me say this, right? And we can see this. If I can point something out, is, for example, the transition of Twitter, now X, and how a lot of things have changed. It's not like change is bad or good. It's a change. But probably the impression I had was the violence of this change, how it was brought into the company, and how it was disruptive in many ways. Is it good or bad? I guess it's something we're going to measure in the next months or years. I don't follow Twitter trends, so I don't know how much they're doing well now under the new management. But I know that Elon Musk is one of these people who really is focused on working a lot, and he wants everyone to work a lot.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you said earlier, right? Creating the culture. What's the culture that you wanna bring to your company? And if I join Twitter, I know that I have to work hard and like 16 hours per day. What is the culture that you brought to the biotech company we're talking about?
The culture that I really reinforced, like I said, was being open and transparent about where we are as a company. I'm not going to create false hope. When we have problems, we have problems, and as a team, we can all solve those together. And that was really the culture that I created. And that people could be open, they could come to me with problems, and they could come with issues. And I would often just for instance, I was also vice president of a hospital. We were pursuing the Malcolm Baldrige award, and I was on the committee under President Clinton that figured those out. And I made it a point when I was in that organization that I even talked carefully with the janitors, because I found out that they knew what was going on more than people further up, so often what happens is, it gets sugar coated. And so employees become very aware that you just want to hear good news. And then often something will happen that you wish you would have known that you didn't. And I truly, believe the culture is important. Manoj Kawali, who was the head of SoftBank India for 40 years, said, the culture is everything. And I'm 70. And looking back over the years, I thoroughly understand that. So if people want to join an organization like Twitter, or X, so be it. I just saw a report in the Wall Street Journal, I believe 2 days ago, that Elon has lost multi-billions of dollars just recently. And, it's to the point that a lot of people don't trust him, but it should be no surprise. I mean, you can look at his past dealings. He had, major fallout with Peter Thiel, with PayPal, and I believe was kind of pushed out. And so I do think it's important that you are honest, open, that you communicate heavily, and that you have, the buy-in from your lieutenants on the path forward, and certainly your board. And I wasn't the CEO of the hospital that I was at, and it was disheartening to me that the hospital administrator didn't give the physicians the time of day. There would be no patient in a hospital without a doctor. Somebody has to bring them in for surgery, for x-rays, whatever the thing was. And so in my mind, the hospital, their key customer was certainly the physicians. And so you have to think hard about who is your ideal customer, and what are you trying to do? Because I think a lot of people get the metrics wrong. Everybody talks about unit economics and the lifetime value of a customer and such. I have consulted with many organizations that, at the end of the day, they were really targeting the wrong customer group. And I'll tell you just a quick story. So when I went to the hospital, I left a Fortune 50 corporation, and we were the biggest producer of potato products in the world, supplying French fries to McDonald's and such. And the administrator came up to me and said, "Oh, aren't you just so happy that you left this organization and came to one that saves people's lives?" And I said, it looks a lot the same to me. The trucks brought the potatoes and dumped them. The ambulance brings the people, dumps them. They take the potatoes in, wash and scrub and cut them. They take the patients in, wash and scrub and cut them, and somebody gets a bill. Yeah. And so, I've had the honor of working in many different industries and being able to look from a 40,000 foot level into what is it that really makes that organization tick, and what is important.
It's a daring association between patients and potatoes, but I see what you're saying. But I see that. I mean, actually, I read your bio, but you're already talking a lot about the great positions that you had as CEO, vice president, and so on and so forth. What's the secret ingredient that you have used to be such a successful leader, such a successful person?
I think part of it stems from my curiosity, and I love to learn. The one thing, and I mentor several people, a 25-year-old, a 35-year-old, and I tell them constant learning. You have to be on top of your game. You have to be, amassing knowledge, which will turn into wisdom. I mean, data points, metrics are nice, but you've got to turn those into actionable metrics. So certainly learning, And then the other thing is I love to help people, and I love a challenge. When somebody says something can't be done, in my head, I'm going, get out of my way, I'll do it. Because I realize, Stefano, that there's no lack of money. There's 369 trillion in global wealth. There's no lack of information. They say it doubles every month or so, countless, ideas. They're all connected to people. And nothing happens without people. People write the checks. They know about the deals. I think now they say 90% of jobs come through who you know. And so another powerful thing is to build a strong network. And I think this is really true the higher you get up in an organization, of being cognizant of what's going on outside in your industry and having other contacts that they can alert you to trends, maybe downfalls, upturns in the organization. And I think if you learn to embrace challenges, so I also, when I was young, did a franchise restaurant. I gave a speech at MIT, and somebody handed me the Wall Street Journal, and it had an article on how to be financially successful, independent in America. And it said there's 5 ways: be a doctor, a lawyer, inherit it, or marry it. And I thought, those are out. and the 5th one was start a business. And I went, start a business? How hard could it be? And, dumb me, I did a franchise restaurant thinking, all the operations, everything's in place, the processes, if I just work hard, I can make this work. And several years into it, I thought I was broke. I was going bankrupt, and I went to a bankruptcy attorney with my financials, and he said, you're not even close. And I said, but I'm broke. And he said, listen, Judy, they can break you, but they can't eat you. And that really helped me break out of the fear cycle to what actions I could take to succeed. And I was able to turn that around and sell it. And then, of course, I became an investor, and now I sit on VC boards and work with high potential companies, getting them funded. But, I think you in your life need to question the assumptions you have, and listen carefully at feedback that you get. And conquering the fear monster at whatever level you have.
There is a lot to unpack here. And we could have another couple of hours of conversation just on what you just said. But of course, there is the one thing that actually led us here, because actually a couple of things, 2 things. One is you are truly a giver. And I have noticed this the moment I wrote you an email to invite you to the podcast. And your answer was not just, oh yes, let's talk about it, was also giving me some advice on microphone and what I could work. And I was surprised by that. But I shouldn't, because actually your name came when I read this book, for who's listening to this, is How to Be a Power Connector, the 5, 50, 100 rule for turning your business network into profits. This is a great book that Judy wrote 9 years ago, 2014. And I've read as soon as I moved to the United States, because I needed to understand. I'm not good at networking. I need to acquire this skill. So of course, we have to transition to networking now, because it is really, and actually networking and the giving mentality, they are combined, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you figure out how to add value. So often when people say to me, they hate networking, it's they feel uncomfortable talking to strangers. So the fear often is strangers or danger. Or, this person is so far above me, what on earth could I offer this person? And the reality is, just listening is such a gift nowadays. But being able to create value, I send articles to people. I try to, right from the get-go, figure out how I can add value for them to succeed, whether it's their company or their life. And I think that is critical. And I'll tell you, I thought I was shy until I was 28. At 28, I finally decided I'd be honest with my friends, who all laughed at me and said, "You're not you're not even close to being shy." And I thought, well, what is it then? And it was a bit fear of strangers and not thinking I was good enough. Who would want to talk to me? What is it I could possibly offer? Well, now I'm friends with billionaires and I'm comfortable. And part of that is, when I was in the corporate world working in Fortune 50 companies, I looked around and I wondered why everybody else was getting promotions. And I realized that I didn't have a network. I mean, I had been taught, like middle-class kids, keep your head down, work hard, people will notice. And they don't in these highly competitive political environments. And so I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I learned how important saying a person's name is. So, I make it a point of in my emails, have a good weekend, Stefano. I make sure that I use that. But I got to the point of making it a game. So I remember once I was with my friend and we pulled into a big restaurant and I said, whoever pulls in next to us, I'm going to figure out a way to talk to them. And somebody pulls in and I get out and I notice they have Idaho plates, which is where I was raised after my dad retired from the military. And I said, "Oh, you're from Idaho. I grew up in, where are you from?" And it ended up, in a 5-minute conversation. So I made it a game, a challenge. And I've never had anybody be ignorant to me. If I'm on a plane and somebody obviously has got their plugs in their ears and they're deep in a book, I'm not going to interrupt them. But I have found out 99% of people are more than happy to talk. And better than that, they're more than happy to help. And so, I teach people my golden questions. You tell them about the project you're working on, and then you say, what other ideas do you have for me? And then number 2, who else do you know I should talk to? And this has landed me on panels with Mark Cuban and at all kinds of places. And, I was raised, I considered myself a nobody from a town of 800 people in rural Idaho. And so it works. And the more that you increase your network, it's almost like you spiral up. And your net worth is highly correlated to who you're running around with. And because you'll end up adopting their mindsets, learning stuff from them.
And this is something that leaders should learn quite soon, or whoever wants to be a successful leader, right? Actually, I'm shy, like I'm shy for real. And I recognize that I've always been this kind of person who can enter in a party, and if I don't feel like it, I can stay on my own for a while. And then I read your book, and it seems so easy because it's like you break it down to very simple steps, right? And I understood what the mistakes that I've done for the last 49 years. Now I'm 50, 49 years of my life. Even in my previous career as a military officer, I did not create any network. It doesn't mean being a yes man to some big admiral, whatever. No, it is, as you said, having this giving mentality, being ready to help, knowing that it's you establishing a relevant human relationship with another person.
Yes, and that way. And the more powerful your relationships are, the more gravitas those people are, the more doors that open, the more opportunities that open. So, I moved back to this small town when my mother was getting ready to die, and I've actually stayed here. And I use the example, I have an individual that's across the street from me that drives a milk truck. On the other hand, I know Tim Draper of Draper VC. Now, if I reach out to both of those people and say, hey, this is what I'm working on, what other ideas do you have for me? Who else do you know I should talk to? I'm going to get very different results. And so, it's important to build a strong, wide, deep network. And, research shows when we talk to strangers, the first thing we look for is some level of kindness because we don't want someone to kill us. And the second is a level of competency. But I add to that generosity, because just because someone can help you doesn't mean they will. And I'll tell you, Stefano, I hate parties. Those kind of situations I hate. When I used to have to go at the corporate world, I'd hang out by the food table because I was, not comfortable with those kind of events, and I still am not necessarily.
It resonates. It resonates.
And you can be an introvert and still have the powerful network. And like I'll tell you, and we can talk later. Who do you need? And I can connect you to the right kinds of people that would help you depending on what your goal is. So Dan Sullivan wrote a little book called I think it's The Question, and I'll send it for the show notes. And it is, if you and I were having this conversation 3 years from today, what would it take for you to be successful and happy? Specifically, what 3 problems do you need to address now? What 3 competencies should you improve? And what 3 opportunities should you go after right now? And I have found that to be very helpful, if I'm having a serious problem, to just, like try to calm the monkey mind, as they call it, and go back to, I must not forget opportunities, and I must not forget my strengths.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like this approach that you just mentioned. I'm gonna read the book, and I'm open to those. I'm a lifetime learner. I love, and that's why I bought your book on first instance, because I needed to learn, since I didn't have the skills. And it's a one way to really understand that you can be a better person. And the moment you think you are reached you are the person you are, well, that I think you're failing. something is going wrong. Well, let's move from networking to another thing that you mentioned earlier. That is the challenges, how to face challenges. And many people coming here in the podcast, they always share their successful stories. But actually, what I'm gonna ask you, Judy, is what is the story that you would like to share with us, but telling like a failure or a mistake you've done with some consequences?
Yeah, well, the restaurant was a big one.
Well, it depends on the type of food. What type of food was it? Just for other curiosity.
It was a breakfast, famous restaurant that originated, I believe, in Portland, called Elmer's Steak and Pancake House. They're in Palm Springs, all through the Northwest. That was a big one. And another big mistake was.
But hold on, but can I ask you? I'm sorry to stop you there. But what was the mistake in the restaurant? What was what led to the bankruptcy?
Well, it didn't go bankrupt. I turned it around and sold it. But me being naive, not understanding the market. So I lived in a geographic area that wasn't big enough to support the restaurant. I mean, I was still doing over $1 million a year annually, but there's ups and downs. It's cyclical a bit. And I was too optimistic. I was too optimistic. I just thought if I worked hard, kept my head down, and I didn't take the initial signs of a problem until I hit the wall. And there's a famous quote about that. Some people can't see until they're reading the letters on the wall. And when I was running out of money, well, but of course I was young, and so these were all important lessons for me to learn. Another one that was honestly pretty terrifying to me, when I had the public company, I raised several $1 million from a fund, and they didn't have a controlling position. But one day they called me and said, Judy, we love what you're doing. You've been great, but now we think there's more money to be made in alternative energy. So you clean up the balance sheet, sell the assets. We'll give you stock, cash, if you do what we say. If you don't, we will personally sue you and sue the company and say you've committed fraud with every penny we've invested. And we've done it before. And I was really frightened. And, at the time I could have been, I guess, overly optimistic and said, go ahead, I haven't done anything wrong. But, I lost a lot of sleep. Now, I did do that and was able to successfully do that. But the lesson for me learned was you have to be very careful who you get in bed with. And this is particularly true. As you know, my second book is How to Crack the Funding Code. I work with companies helping them get funded. You had better know these people's history and make sure they're not litigious. And if I would have asked for some recommendations of other companies to talk to, I would have found out that this was their history. So that was a very difficult, it was a hard lesson, but it was a great lesson. And the reality is every one of these difficulties just put me on a higher level. And, there's a saying, next level, next devil. So, it's almost like in life, you're either getting out of a problem, you're getting in one, or you're going through one. And so the higher you go, you're always going to have to deal with problems. So if you adopt the mindset of, wow, this is a great challenge for me, I'm going to learn a lot. Now, what do I need to do to figure this out? Who can I talk to? Who can give me the best advice? Can I find somebody who has been through this before? And then come up with an action plan. And, even if the restaurant would have gone bankrupt, it wasn't going to kill me. I mean, that was the good lesson, right? There's very few things that will kill you. And so that would be my answer. Too long.
No. Actually, if I can go a little bit deeper, if you allow me to, what is the lesson that you learn about yourself in these two situations?
That it is true that I can make anything happen, like I did getting millions of dollars from this fund. But the lesson, learned was that I needed to do my due diligence on them. So that one was really important. And it's important also with, people you have in your network. You want people who can help you move forward with your vision. But you want people who are going to protect you from getting stabbed in the back.
Well, it's not always easy to discern who's good, who's bad, right? Sometimes you need to, I guess, catch some hints.
Well, I once asked a corporate recruiter, who hired CEOs for, very large companies, how do you ascertain, character? And she said, oh, I watch the little things, like, do they have a pet? Do they park in a handicap zone and they're not handicapped? She said, I watch all of these kind of things. Well, if you study the dark triad, the narcissistic, sociopathic, and Machiavellian people, which is about, 7% of the population, most of them know how to work around that. I've read they even will rent a pet for a date to convince you they're so good. But just absolutely important that you do your homework. But at the end, I said to her, anybody can do that. And she said, I find someone who has known them for 10 years. And this resonates deeply with me. I was in Colombia, Bogota, Colombia, working with the central bank, helping them with At the time, it was crowdfunding, and they wanted to improve their entrepreneurial ecosystem, but they had money laundering rules. And I met with the head of Google Latin America, and he was co-founders of a startup that did online loans, never met with a person. And I said to him, how do you do this successfully? What about all the bad actors? And he said, oh, we've got these sophisticated algorithms and this black box, and, went on and on and on about his engineers and stuff. And I said, so at the end of the day, what was the most important thing you learned? And he said, who refers you?
You have to trust that person first.
Yes. Yeah. You'd better find somebody that knows them. And I've made that mistake a couple of times, even as an investor, as an angel investor. I lost, I think, the first $50,000 by listening to someone that I thought really knew what they were doing, only later to find out they weren't who they said they were. They were very charismatic. It's a common mistake when you become an angel investor. They say don't fall in love with the founder. Again, you have to do your due diligence and look at everything. Otherwise, you flush your money down the toilet.
That's that's an important lesson, I would say. And actually, since you mentioned this, and in your role of angel investor, what is the you have noticed in these generation of leaders that are coming up now and they're starting their businesses? What is the main trait, if you want, that you think is different from the past, if there is any?
Well, it's a totally different world with all the technology and, abilities to communicate, but the opportunities are just unbelievable. Back in the day when I was a kid, it was a big deal when we got a fax machine, right? And I remember cellular phones. I remember meeting with the CEO of Motorola at grad school. And it was a flip phone. It looked like it had come out of Star Trek. And so, everything has really changed. But, the most important things stay the same, and that's a passion for what you're creating and persistence. Persistence. I find a lot of people that stop prematurely. And that's, the fear factor. And a lot of people would have been successful if they would have just kept going a couple of more steps.
Passion and persistence. I like that. And it goes back, despite all the technological advancement that you mentioned. And actually, I think someone listening to this podcast doesn't even know what a fax machine is.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. I'll have to tell you, I had a watch on, and this is many, many years ago. And this little boy came up to me and said to his mother, look, she's got an antique watch on. It has like hands that tell you the time.
Well, some of those are quite fancy, actually.
Yeah.
Not antique at all. So, well, yeah, but you're right. I mean, now everything is digital, right? We used to be digital, almost 100%. Like this call.
Yeah.
I mean, you are in Salt Lake City. I'm in Washington.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
But what I was saying is that then, despite all this technological advancement, everything goes back to the human dimension, as you actually talked earlier, right? It's when you mention curiosity, the networking, the listening is simply being human and understanding that everyone else is human too, and they come with their own stories, with their own problems, and it's important to connect with them.
Yeah. And, most people will help if you ask. And so it is absolutely critical because the answers are out there. The answers are always out there.
Yes.
And every resource you would ever need is out there.
Yes. And then that's the one thing that I really appreciated about the book that you wrote. Really the human dimension of it. It's networking might be seen as I don't know, a mean way, not a mean way, but just because they want to make a profit or out of it, but it's not true. Because actually the first act as you teach is to approach a person with a giving mentality, and it actually makes the difference. This is something that I coach on sometimes, because it's when you that I've learned and now I coach on, but when you approach a person, you have to go there with a giving mentality, really telling yourself, I'm a giver, I'm not here to take anything from this person. I want to help this person, even if I don't know them.
Yeah. And I did the same thing, like giving speeches. And I think I've done 300 around the world, as big as, 4,000 people in the crowd. And I still get really nervous. But I think about, I am here to help, to share knowledge and wisdom that I have acquired, sometimes with kicks to the head, so that other people don't have to get those kicks to the head. And, I recently read a book on sales, and it was the same premise, is you go in there to really listen and learn what the problem is, before you start drowning people with the benefits like a used car salesman.
Right.
And my book wasn't going to be on networking. I was going to write a book on how to get your company funded. And I had a list of 50 people I was going to interview. Reuben Abraham, who I'd met in Delhi, India, all these people. And my agent called me and she said, how do you know these people? You must have gone to Harvard or Stanford. I said, oh, no, Utah State University twice. And she said, we need to do a book on networking. And I said, not me. I think it's icky. I think it's manipulative, leaves me cold. And she said, well, we'll call it something else. Well, I didn't think, the book would be of interest. And she said, I'm going to send the proposal to New York. It was on a Friday. She said, on Monday, get ready to get on a plane and go. And we had proposals back from 4 publishers. I didn't have to go to New York. So it was kind of an accident, but it's the same thing, whether raising money is the perfect example. That's a pretty gated, under the radar community of the people that have money. And it is all based on trust, referrals.
And also, this is a fairy tale of opportunity, right? Someone brought you an opportunity and you were smart, quick enough to catch it. Many other people probably would say, no, I don't want to write a book on networking. That's it. Right? I'm sure that the book, whatever, would have been successful. But still, it was the opportunity. And that's another lesson that we can learn from your stories, how to really recognize among all the challenges, because challenges bring opportunities. They bring risks, of course, and not everything is easy, but also something that we can take advantage from and we did not expect. We need to be flexible on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often say to people, there's nothing I like better than chaos, because when you have chaos, you can create whatever you want. And certainly with new companies, startup companies, they're always in chaos. And companies that are going through a myriad of problems, are in chaos. And you have to be very cautious then that you don't jump on the first answer, which is probably wrong.
Well, I would say many people are scared by chaos, and they need everything to be organized and everything to be structured and perfectly planned. And I understand, but I think that there is a kind of being naive there, because we also know that we cannot control everything. Actually, we control a little, like 10%, 5% of what we can do. Everything else happens to us. And that's where the opportunities come. And that's where the chaos is a source of different endeavors, even more successful than you thought.
Yeah. Well, and those opportunities and problems, it depends on where you're at, right?
Right.
So, who you surround yourself with, what kind of an environment that you're in.
Yeah.
I have to go get on another call.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, before we say goodbye, and thank you, actually, let me ask you the final question then. That is the recommendation you will give to someone that comes to you and say, "Hey, Judy, I want to be a great leader like you are, and you've been for all your life. What should I do? What is the suggestion that you could give to me?"
You know, I usually tell people jump in the frying pan. I mean, it doesn't matter wherever you are, you can be a leader. You can join a not-for-profit organization and lead, be on a committee. There's endless situations that you can lead in your community. You can be a leader in your church, leader in your company. But you have to get the ticket punched to play the game.
I like that. Well, thank you very much, Judy. Thank you for having been a great guest. And
Thank
for
you.
sharing
Thank you
your
so
life.
much, Stefano, and we'll talk again.